Today's scripture comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. Hear a word from God. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or an arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produces abundantly. And he thought to him, "What should I do? For I have no place to store all my crops." Then he said, "I will do this. I will pull down my barn and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is you, those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich towards God.'" This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. It is so good to have you in worship today. We are small but mighty indeed. Today we are beginning a 4-week sermon series called Enough. Many of you know that October usually marks the season in our congregation when we talk about stewardship. And I was going to make a joke about everyone leaving, but I feel like that's already happened, so we're good. We have got it out of our system. So for the next 4 Sundays, we will be using a curriculum from Reverend Adam Hamilton entitled Enough. And most of your Sunday schools will be using this as well. Some of you have already done it in your Sunday school, so y'all will have another curriculum. But during these 4 weeks, we will journey together as a congregation to determine what is enough in a world of abundance and excess. So I want to begin with this question. What is the American dream? Since we're in LifeLine, y'all can actually speak to me. So just call it out. What do you think of when you hear the phrase, the American dream? Jack? Freedom and riches? Yes, good. Freedom. Anyone else? I can call on you, I see you. What do you think of when you think of the American dream?
White picket fences.
White picket fences. Mary Prater.
Having fun.
Having fun. Okay.
Be what you want to be.
Being what you want to be, right? Being what you have always dreamed of. Bobby? Being successful. Sawyer? I think I'm just going to pretend I didn't hear you. Okay, anyone else? Yes. Hot dogs. That is very American. Anyone else have anything that you think of when you think of the American dream? Okay, all those are good. Riches and success and white picket fences and being who you want to be. All of those are what we think of. But so we have 2 conflicting ideas of what the American dream is, and both begin around the time of our founding fathers. The Declaration of Independence claims that we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When immigrants were coming into America from Ellis Island, they would read on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, "Give me your tired, your poor, your hungry, huddled masses yearning to breathe free." And again, we're all familiar with Dr. Martin Luther King's dream that we would not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. All of these show the potential of our American dream. America is a dream that so many people yearn to live in so that they can have a better life and provide a better life than they have for their children. The American life, the American dream has become synonymous with upward mobility. Of course, we should all want to provide for our families, and it's natural to want your children to have more than you did, but at what point is enough enough? At what point does the dream of more diminish our ability to enjoy what we have now? To some, the American dream has become the American nightmare. Our yearning for more is taking up residence in our hearts and minds, and many of us are so blinded by what we want and don't have that we aren't able to see what we do. Now, don't raise your hands, but I want you to think about this. How many of you know what you would do if you won the lottery? How you would spend that money? Well, a lot of us, right? You can't raise your hands, but yes, a lot of us, right? I do. If I got a really big Powerball, I would buy a BMW X5 and a new mountain house. It's true. I'm sure I would find something to do with the rest of the money as well. And would like to think that some of it would be charitable. But you see, we spend so much time daydreaming about what would we do with all this magical money that we forget to be in the present. I don't even play the lottery, and I know what I would do with it. But rather than just being grateful for the job I have that provides a wonderful life for my son and I, and being grateful for the home that this church has gifted me, I'm dreaming of bigger and better things. You see, this desire for more is just robbing us of happiness, and some of us of our sanity. Did you know that 80% of Americans are concerned about the economy and their personal finances? And 50% of Americans, that is half, by the way, 50% are concerned about the ability to provide the basic needs for their family. We've gotten to where we are because of two diseases that Adam Hamilton coins and talks about: affluenza and credititis. Affluenza is not a new concept. It's a concept that we are always yearning for bigger and better and are never content with what we have. But the biggest problem with affluenza is that even when you do get something you've always wanted, you unwrap that new iPhone 10, then you are already leaving with a desire for more because you're always and constantly unfulfilled. And we all have varying degrees of this disease. There are some sermons I preach where I'm like, okay, I can talk to people about this. And there's some that I think, yo, you really should be in the pulpit. This is one of those categories. Stewardship is challenging, and figuring out ways that we can honestly use our gifts to provide enough for ourselves and enough for others is a challenge, and I'm going to claim it. I really like to buy baby clothes. So there's that. But affluenza is contagious. We see someone else having something, we have the desire to keep up with the Joneses or to become the Joneses, and it's a never-ending disease. But affluenza is made possible by something Adam Hamilton called credititis, the concept that we pay now, buy now and pay later. Buy now, pay later. Everyone knows the MasterCard logo. Say it with me. There's some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard. You got it. The invention of credit cards has only fueled our need and desire for more and more, because they didn't exist that long ago. If you wanted something and you didn't have the money for it, you put it on layaway and you paid in installments, and until it was fully paid for, you didn't actually get to take it home. But we don't live in that culture anymore. With the invention of credit cards, we get instant gratification, whether we have the money to pay for it or not. This breeds the desire for more and more and postpones the stress and reality of whether or not we have the money to buy it. Now, I know this is not the most exciting and maybe heartwarming, uplifting sermon you've ever heard, but I promise there is some good coming. The good is that we have a choice and there is hope. This crazy cycle that some of us live in can be stopped. There are two tents that we can choose to live in. And not camping tents, believe me, I wouldn't choose either of those. Two tents that we can choose to live in. The tent of contentment or the tent of discontentment. For those of us plagued by affluenza and credititis, we are constantly discontent with what we have. And enough is never enough. Adam Hamilton says we have restless heart syndrome. It's like restless legs, but for your heart. He said there's always a constant discontentment. Nothing is ever enough. Those who suffer from this are never, ever satisfied. The minute we get something, it's old and outdated, and we need something bigger and newer. But what if we were just as restless about our discipleship as we are the things we don't have? What if our desire for more applied to our walk with God rather than our possessions? What if we yearn to pray more and read more scripture and worship to the same level that we yearned for stuff? Or what if we focused our discontentment and our attention on the needs of others? What if we were just as concerned with the issues of poverty and racial injustice and the needs for affordable housing as we are for the things that we need or think we need? So that brings me to the other tent we can choose to live in, the tent of contentment. This tent acknowledges we have enough and allows us to have joy in that, to find gratitude in enough. If we are truly content, we give thanks for the house we live in instead of trying to have enough money to change the countertops and the floors and the doors and the light fixtures. Those are what get me the most in the parsonage. You see, we all have something. Now, I could say most of us could use a little help with contentment. Am I right? So Josh always talks in traditional and expects replies, but we're in traditional. But in LifeLine, you're really supposed to reply. So am I right? Could we all use a bit of help in the contentment phase? Yes, thank you so much. It is good to be here. Contentment means that you are happy to drive your 10-year-old car around, even if it could use some updates and isn't quite as shiny as your neighbor's. Now, I could say most of us are not quite there, right? Our society pounds in our heads that we could be content with what we have because there's always something more. So Adam Hamilton lists 4 ways to cultivate this contentment. First, let's all remind ourselves that things could be worse. That's something we often forget. We often think that things are worse than they could ever be. But let's be realistic and rational. Things could always be worse. We could live in Houston or Puerto Rico or South Florida right now, and we could have completely lost everything. So let us be grateful for what we have. Secondly, ask ourselves, how long will this make me happy? So when I'm on Zulily at 3 in the morning feeding my child, I should ask myself that. These are all things that we can practice. How long will this make us happy? How long will this new car or this new house or these new jeans give you real happiness? That next iPhone is going to be outdated before it leaves the store. So what kind of happiness will it give you? Thirdly, we must truly practice having gratitude. Gratitude is essential to contentment. If we are grateful for what we have, we are less likely to yearn for more. Apostle Paul reminds us that we are to give thanks in all circumstances. If we do this, we will truly begin to know what it means to be grateful. And lastly, we are called to ponder this question. Where does your soul find true satisfaction? Where does our soul find true satisfaction? Society tells us that we find satisfaction in things that give us comfort and things that are luxurious. But we know that as disciples of Christ, true satisfaction comes only from the one who created us and called us good. We will only find rest for our souls in him. So as we prepare to go out today, let us each ask ourselves, which tent are we living in? Are you always discontent with what you have and constantly yearning for more? If so, you are not alone, my brothers and sisters. But you do not have to be stuck in the same tent. You can choose to live with contentment. You can practice ways of cultivating contentment and pray God will help you. And for 3 more weeks, we will discuss more what it means to have enough. May we all truly believe or begin to believe that one's life doesn't consist in the abundance of possessions, but in the abundance of Christ's presence in our lives. And may we go out striving for the American, not for the American dream, but for God's dream in our lives. And may we find peace in our hearts with enough. Now, as we prepare to feast at this table, of simple elements of bread and wine, we know that these are more than enough for us and for our soul. As we prepare, we're going to do something a little different today. And we are going to turn around, stand up, and greet our neighbors with the peace of Christ, knowing that as we prepare for this table, we will prepare to love our neighbors as well.